season is gonna make people so mad, but I am having the time of my life. Hello everybody, it's Katie here. So I'm just gonna warn you now, if you haven't seen all of Shadow and Bone season 2 and you do not want to be spoiled, then this is not the video for you. Please do not carry on watching because there is no point in me even trying to do a spoiler-free review. There's just... I can't. Yeah, so there you go. I wish I had a picture of the look on my face during episode 6 when it dawned on me that this season was going to cover Ruin and Rising. When Bagra told Mel that he was the Firebird, and it hit me that we were going to do the entire story, all 3 books, when I was only expecting Siege and Storm. Nothing prepared me for any of this. I knew from cast interviews that we were going to go into Ruin and Rising slightly. I thought that maybe they'd end the season with Bagra's death and Nikolai being turned into a monster. That is not what happened. No, but instead, the show went so completely unhinged that we ended up with King of Scores content. So yeah, please don't expect a single coherent thought to come out of my mouth during this entire... I can't even call it a review. I don't know what this is. This is word vomit. But to get it out of the way, I really loved this season, and I know that it's already split opinions very much. There are people that just liked it, there are people that absolutely adored it, and then there are the people who really fucking hated it. I'm not one of those people. I had a great time, an absolute ball. I said it on Tumblr last night, but this is the most fun I've had with an adaptation since Shadowhunters went completely off the rails and decided to kill Jocelyn and save Max. I've been around in this book community a long ass time. I've seen a lot of bad adaptations and brilliant adaptations. I have evolved to the point of not really caring what changes anymore. I'm just here for a good time, and a good time is what I got. So with that out of the way, where do we start? Let's start with the crows. Since not a single one of us had any idea how the crows would be incorporated into this season, we didn't really know what to expect, and it actually turned out that what we got was the majority of Crooked Kingdom. I know there are Crows fans that are really angry about the decisions that were made with regards to the crows in season 2. However, they had to do something with them. This was always a mashup series where they brought the crows forward into Alina's story. You know, you had to expect that they'd be given something to do, and obviously the creators of the show wanted to give us some content from the books that we love. Lee has always been very insistent that the drug, Jorda Parem, could not exist whilst the Darkling was still alive, so we couldn't touch on that plot whatsoever, which obviously took the Ice Court heist off the table as well. The one thing that could be brought forward is Pekka Rollins, and so that's what happened in season 2. So before we delve more into that, I just want to say there is never any guarantees when it comes to shows like this, especially on Netflix. They have such a habit of not letting fantasy shows properly find their feet and just cancelling them super quick. Even though I wanted a season 2 desperately, I'm still completely surprised that we got one, because it mainly appealed to the book fans rather than drawing new fans, and so I thought the probability of us getting cancelled was very high, but we got a season 2 anyway. So I think going into this, we should have all known that there was never any expectations that we would get renewed for season 3. And I feel like that risk is why season 2 ended up being the way that it did. I think the writers and the show creators wanted to put in as much as they possibly could just in case this show doesn't go any further, because it would be an absolute crying shame to not get the Crows' backstories and some of their emotional trauma and the reasoning behind why they are the way that they are in this show. And so I do feel like that's probably why. It was a just in case sort of thing. And I know people aren't happy with that, but that's the way it is. And so because of that, we stuffed the plot of Crooked Kingdom when it comes to Pekka and Kaz getting back at him into the first half of season 2. First things first, can we have a round of applause for Freddie fucking Carter? I remember season 1. I remember a large chunk of this fandom saying that he wasn't right for the part of Kaz, and that Kaz wasn't very well done in season 1 because he was a little bit too soft and he wasn't very Kaz Brecker-like. I hope you're all eating your words now, because tell me that that wasn't Kaz Brecker. Freddie's acting in this season, that is the Kaz Brecker that we know and love. He was unhinged. Unhinged. And so was I. But yeah, we got Kaz's revenge plotline, and I know people are saying that it didn't really have the same level of satisfaction that it needed to because it was rushed. I'm still so fucking glad that we got to see that. Like, if we don't get any further seasons, if we don't get a Six of Crows spin-off, then at least we have that. At least people know why Kaz wears his gloves, why he can't touch people, why he is so traumatized. And by the way, the trauma is something that they did so beautifully in the show. The scene in the carriage, the minute he got put in the carriage with Jesper, I knew what was coming. And the flashback scenes with Geordie, oh my god. Nothing could have prepared me to see that come to life. So yeah, that happened. And it was glorious. I'm just jumping from one topic to the next so quickly that you're probably going to get whiplash, but there's no plan here. I've gotta chat. And to talk about the Crows in general, finally getting to interact with each other. Except for Matthias, of course, because, you know, he was in Hellgate for the entire season. But we got five Crows. It was just so wonderful to see the 5 of them interact with each other. That ending scene in episode 1 with the 5 of them on the roof as Kaz blows up the Crow Club. Tears in my eyes because it was just so special to me. Brick by brick indeed. You all know by this point that Wylan has always been one of my favourite characters in this story. To see him come to life. Could they have found a more perfect actor than Jack? No. It's like they cast Wylan to play himself. He was just everything that Wylan needed to be. Yeah, I nearly burst into tears every time he opened his mouth, if I'm being honest. So, yeah. Let's talk about Wesper. Speaking of things that I absolutely did not expect going into this season, I woke up in the morning getting ready for my Wesper crumbs. I was like, oh, we're gonna see them interact. It won't be the relationship that they have further on down the line because, you know, that's in the second part of Crooked Kingdom. I'm not gonna get to see them kiss, but I'll get to see them bond, at least. Oh no, I got everything. Everything. So it turns out the 2 of them had screwed before we'd even met Wylan. Off screen. Before season 2, they had a one-night stand. When Wylan said that Kaz had found him in the tannery, little exclamation points were popping up in my head because I was like, well, they keep hinting that Jesper and Wylan have already met, but if Kaz found him in the tannery, then how did he and Jesper meet? And so we get further down the line and we get the absolute motherfucking bombshell that they actually had a one-night stand. And this is what I love about adaptations just completely going off the rails from the source material, because those moments of complete shock that we as book fans get to enjoy It's worth every second. Because when I say my sister and I had to pause the shit out of that episode because we were screaming. I'm surprised I still have functioning lungs today because I don't think I've ever yelled that much during a show adaptation before. So we already have a Wylan and Jesper backstory. Instead of having to wait until Crooked Kingdom to see the payoff, we got them together as a couple in season 2. I have seen so many complaints about how they've speedrun Wesper instead of it being the slow burn that it is in the books. And on one hand, I do completely understand people's point because we're used to them in a certain way. We're used to that story of how they get together and it's gorgeous. If you're going to speedrun any relationship in this story, the only one that's really possible with is Jesper and Wylan. You can't do it with Kaz and Kanej because, you know, they haven't even fully figured their shit out at the end of Crooked Kingdom. And obviously Nina and Matthias are, well, you know, they're going through things. So the best option, if you want to put a relationship on screen, is Jesper and Wylan. And I, for one, thoroughly enjoyed what they did. I think the best part of it was that it was just completely joyful. We don't have enough open queer joy on our screens, especially not when it comes to fantasy shows. We're getting that way with contemporary now, you know, we have shows like Heartstopper and stuff, and that's wonderful, but we deserve queer happiness in fantasy as well. We got that with Jesper and Wylan in this season. And alongside that, we also delved into Jesper's backstory, why he hides the fact that he's Grisha, and why he shuts off that part of himself. Him and Wylan had a tiny bit of angst, but they talked through things, and it was all better by the end of it. And I know that's not the way it goes, but I felt so much happiness watching that unfold that I wouldn't change that for anything. Like the pure shot of serotonin that I got when my boy Wylan ran to kiss his man, nobody can take that away from me. Nobody. And as I always say with adaptations anyway, nothing's going to change the books. That's always going to be there. The source material is always there for you, completely unchanged. You will always have that version of Jesper and Wylan. So does it really matter if it's a little bit different on screen? Not in the grand scheme of things, no, because you can always choose to just walk away from the show, which is a lesson that a lot of people need to learn and have been needing to learn for a long time. Life's too short to hold grudges on show creators for doing their own thing with fictional characters that you don't own. As much as I'd love to make this entire video solely on Wylan, I am gonna have to move on to other things. Otherwise I just won't shut up and this video will be 3 hours long. So let's turn our attention to Kaz and Kanej, one of my favourite fictional ships of all time, because they are absolutely unparalleled. There is nothing that comes close to the intricate relationship that they have, and this season delivered so much. I got my favourite Kanej line, which is one of my favourite lines in any book ever, and you know what line it is. It's the armour line. Amita Suman, oh my god, I am in love with you. She understood the assignment, the tension between them, the angst, the everything. When she got injured and they were on that cemetery island and she had her bandages and Kaz walked into the room, my brain was just screaming because I knew what they were gonna do in that moment. Again, I wasn't expecting any of this, so yeah, nobody warned me. I don't have enough words for how much I loved them. So they did also give us the Crooked Kingdom ending for Kaz and Kanej in the final episode, where Kaz gave her information on her family and she went off to kill slavers on a boat that was captained by Mal, who's now Sturmhond. You know what, we'll talk about that in a second, we will. Didn't end the way I expected it to with the two of them, but I don't have a single bad word about how this season handled them. And then obviously I'll quickly mention Nina and Matthias. I just feel so sorry for them. Poor Matthias. Not only is he going through all of this personal emotional turmoil, where he's having his kinky dreams about him and Nina, but then Peggy Rollins gets put in prison, kills the friend that he's made, and then he starts having to make a deal with him. Yeah, that was an unexpected blow. Can we talk about the scene where Peck found Nina in Hellgate though? And it looked like she was gonna betray Kaz, but then it turned out they were in on it together all along. Oh, chef's kiss. Just, I don't have enough time in the day to talk about how much I love the Crows. Yeah, lots of feelings, lots of thoughts. I don't want to let my Crows favoritism show too much, so I am going to try and shut up about them now, mostly. Let's talk about Alina. I don't even know whether to just jump straight to the end or not, but I'll try not to. Looking at the Shadow and Bone storyline in general, I do actually really understand why they've put 2 books in one season, because I was a little bit worried about how they were going to flesh out Siege and Storm. Despite the fact that Nikolai is one of my favourite characters, Siege and Storm is actually not my least favourite book of this. Actually, is it? Of the trilogy? I think it might be. It just felt like the filler story. So I don't mind that they rushed through it a little bit and then went off to Ruin and Rising as well. But poor Alina, she went through some shit. Darklinas and Malinas have been arguing for 2 years, only for Alina to end up engaged to Nikolai. Oh, not one of you saw that comment. So yeah, we finally got Nikolai this season. Another absolute highlight for me. I think a lot of us have been very worried about how he was going to come across on screen, but I can say with complete and utter honesty that Mr. Paddy Gibson has me completely whipped. He was the most perfect Nikolai. And it's funny because he was the one getting all the criticism before season 2 because people didn't want him as Nikolai, because people are always pissy when their fan casts aren't chosen, and people didn't think that he looked the part as Nikolai. The funny part is that after the show aired, I saw complaints about everything else. No one had a bad word to say about Nikolai, because there are no bad words. He's perfect. I loved him in this season so much. I loved that there was less romantic feelings from him for Alina, even though it's still there hinted at just a little bit. They had more of a best friends vibe than a weird little love interesty vibe like they had in the books. I much preferred the relationship between them, and I just really enjoyed him and Mal together in this season. That hug between them when, you know, everybody realised that Mal was going to have to die. Absolutely gorgeous. Yeah, again, I could talk all day about Nikolai, but there's just so much to cover. Talking of new characters, we also had Talia and Tamar. Was that not the sexiest introduction to a couple of characters you have ever seen in your life? I was on the floor. They were completely perfect. Again, not a bad word about them, just perfection, utterly. The only criticism I have is that Tamar and Nadia never got to kiss on screen, and we were robbed of that completely. They were adorable though, they were so wholesome and perfect and lovely. But yeah, they should have gotten a little kissy. Come on, guys. Everybody else kissed. Let the sapphics kiss. I do just want to quickly talk about Talia and Kanej in the final episode. You know, when she goes off on the boat with Captain Mal. What's going on there? Talia got a little bit of a crush on Kanej, and I don't blame him because we all do. But that little look between them at the end there, guys, what's going on? Am I scared or excited about that potential? I don't know. Yeah, so that was the thing. Talia was adorable with his poetry throughout season 2, and I loved the little scene between him and Jesper when he was trying to give Jesper some love advice. So we're flashed to something else that we need to talk about. Genya and David. This was supposed to be Siege and Storm, not Rule of Wolves. What the fuck? So throughout this season, David became one of my favourite characters. I loved him anyway, but he is just so unintentionally funny that he's actually a comedic genius. I love him and Genya. I always have loved him and Genya. I did expect them to get together once I realised that this wasn't just Siege and Storm, but I wasn't expecting it to end so quickly. However, there was no body, so the rule is if there's no body, then they're not really dead. So David's alive, in my opinion, and he's gonna be fine. But just to quickly talk about Genya on her own, everything about her story was just heartbreaking this season. I knew it was going to be hard having to watch what she suffered at the hands of the Darkling, considering we only got to hear about it briefly in the books. So to see it was just brutal. Daisy Head's performance in that role, when she smashed up the little workshop, and then her grief over David getting her out of there whilst he sacrificed himself. Oh my fucking god. So yeah, talking of the Darkling, I still haven't even mentioned him. What I did appreciate about this season is that when it came to season 1, I feel like it heavily relied on the Darkling. I feel like it was marketed on the Darkling mostly as well, which, you know, is understandable. We did get Ben Bonds. But yeah, it was very Darklina focused in season 1. I feel like in season 2, everybody else got a bigger chance to shine instead. And I really do appreciate that. Like, the Darkling was still a huge part of it, and we got an incredible performance from Ben, as always, but we got more from everybody else, basically. It wasn't just about the Darkling. And he was as awful as ever this season. I don't want to piss people off, which is impossible, but, you know, I've never shipped the Darkling and Alina, and I know there is a huge portion of the fandom that does, and you know, whatever, you want to ship what you want, then you can. But you do have to acknowledge that he is manipulating her constantly, he is emotionally abusive, and I think that really came through in this season, and he did some things that were just completely irredeemable, and I'm glad that the show reminded people that he is the villain. As much as a lot of you would argue otherwise, he was the bad guy. I absolutely adored the final scene between him and Bagra. I actually think Bagra's death was done better in the show than it was in the book, because it didn't feel as impactful in the book for some reason, but I feel like in the show it really hit me. That final talk between the two of them, and what I really loved is when his shadow monsters went to attack her, and you could see how torn he was over that, because he didn't want them to, but he can't control what they do. I know he's an irredeemable villain, but it does humanize him as well, and it reminds you that this is still a boy who loved his mum once. Yeah, so yeah, I really like the way his storyline was handled this season. But you know, if you are a Darkling stan and a Darklina, the show really gave a final twist of the knife by getting his death over and done with in the first 10 minutes of the final episode. Yeah, the big bad's not coming down at the end of the episode, no, he's going down straight away so that we can deal with everything else and set up King of Scots. So just to quickly talk about that final episode. Actually, I haven't even talked about Alina and Mal. Quickly, let me just say that I absolutely appreciated the shit out of them in this season. And yeah, I shipped them so much more in the show than I did in the books. I really, really love show Mal. He's so much more interesting, and you get to feel empathy for him because you get his side of the story. So I really loved their dynamics in this season. They had angst. They had their night of passion together before, you know, the whole stabby firebird thing happened. Another scene I loved was David when he was trying to amputate Mal's finger. I'm going back to talking about how much I love David, I'm so sorry. But yeah, Mal was another standout part of this season for me. And then we get to that final episode and he gets a completely different ending. See, we've been warned over the past few weeks that the ending was really going to shock book fans. So I knew they were going to do something, but obviously I had no idea that it was going to be the end of Shadow and Bone overall, and that they were going to just completely obliterate it. So as we know, in the final book, Alina loses her powers and her and Mal manage to get away together. They run an orphanage. It's all happy and wholesome. None of that in this episode. When the darkling died 10 minutes in and Mal was brought back to life, that was when I knew shit was about to go down because we still had 50 minutes of the episode left. So yeah, instead of that ending, Alina still has her powers, I think. They're a bit different at the very end, and Mal is going through an existential crisis, not really knowing who he is and what his purpose is now that he's not the Firebird. And so to deal with that, Alina sends him off to sea, and Nikolai tells him to become Sermon. It's so absolutely bonkers that I love it. Out of all of the things that shocked me in this season, I think that was the biggest. Well, you know what, in some weird way it really does make sense. It does make sense. He does need to find new purpose and stuff, and yeah, good for him. Good for him taking an edge off to sea so they can go and kill slavers. I'm sure they're all having a great time. And then Alina is engaged to Nikolai, who's being crowned as king, and still has his little monster thing going on, so we're definitely moving into King of Scots territory, but with Alina. And then we get to the very end. When I realised what was happening in this season and that we were going to wrap up that storyline, I had a feeling that the drug was going to be mentioned at the end, and yeah, that turned out to be true. They were so desperate to just get the darkling out of the way so they could move on to the Six of Crows plot. It's so obvious. Yeah, Gerda Parem was mentioned right at the very end, and somebody in the coronation hall took it and started murdering everyone. And then Alina used the cut. The decibel levels that the screaming in this house hit in that moment came out of absolutely nowhere. I thought we were going to mention the drug and like foreshadow the crows, but I wasn't expecting Alina to just whack out the cut like that. What does this mean for the future of everything? What does any of this mean? Like, I'm trying to think about the implications of that and what can possibly happen from now if we do get renewed for a third season. I mean, obviously we are going to go into King of Scars and into Six of Crows, but then Alina is going to be there with her powers. I mean, I wasn't expecting to just be on the brink of King of Scars at all. The bee landing on Zoya, I was not prepared. I wasn't. When they said they were gonna like bring things from all of Lee's books forward, I thought maybe just like little hints, not just like completely skipping to King of Scars plot. What? So, yeah. That little smile that Alina did at the end there as well, like, she going anti-hero mode? She in a villainy era? I'm so mad that it ended the way that it did, because imagine if we don't get a third season. If we don't get that. What? You're gonna leave it there? No. No. There is absolutely so much that I've forgotten to talk about, or that I don't have time to address, because it was 8 hours of a show and so much happened within it. So yeah, I'll probably make another video further down the line when I've had time to digest everything, because it was a lot and I'm still emotionally drained. But yeah, overall I'm definitely not angry. I'm very, very open to changes and things anyway, so I don't really care. I had a good time. I actually really loved the way the crows were brought into this season and how they were there for the ending of the Darkling storyline. I've seen people say that this season would have been better without the crows in it, but I'm a Crows stan. I'm very happy that they got to be part of it and I won't apologise for that. In terms of the future, I know Eric's mentioned that he's got a Six of Crows spin-off planned, but obviously the future of that is entirely determined by how well season 2 does. And again, we know what Netflix is like, so I'm trying to keep my expectations low, but If we don't get anything else after this, I'm going to be absolutely devastated because I've had such a blast. I love this cast so much. I love getting to see all of the Grishaverse characters intermingle with each other. I like the way they've changed the story so that there's things we don't expect. In the future we can still do the Ice Court heist for Six of Crows, and I know because we've covered a lot of stuff in Crooked Kingdom, people are worried that it just won't be as fleshed out, but there's definitely still more things that we can go further into, like Wylan's family, because you don't get to find out much about Wylan as a person in this season, so you have all that to come, and you have Nina and Matthias to deal with. And also it gives the show a chance to do their own things with the Crows after the events of Crooked Kingdom, which I wouldn't be opposed to. I'm down for whatever. And then when it comes to the Shadow and Bone cast of characters, the one thing that we didn't deal with this season was the Apparat, his creepy little section. I was actually glad that it wasn't in this season because that's my least favourite part of the book. When they're underground with him, it grated on me so much because I can't stand that man. So you can still bring that plot into it in a different context alongside King of Scars. You know, there's other ways to mash up these stories, and it's always been a mashup from the very start because we mix the Crows in with these characters. So, you know, it's not as if it would be completely out of place to do that. There is still more of the story to tell. I'd love to see what else they can do with this, and I really hope they get the chance, not just for us but for the cast, because they're all so fantastic and I want to see more of them as these characters that I love. So yeah, as much as I'd love to do an episode by episode breakdown, I cannot do that in this video, but this is my initial outburst of thoughts. And I know I'm going to stop recording and there'll be a million other things that I just want to scream about, but there's so much, guys, there is so much. I am very active on Tumblr when it comes to Shadow and Bone, so I will leave a link to my profile in the description. If you would like to talk all things Grishaverse with me, then please feel free. But yeah, I'll probably write out more of my thoughts on there when I'm coherent. As always, I want to hear all of your thoughts and feelings down in the comments, although I'm pretty terrified to read them. I've been terrified delving into anyone's opinions when it comes to this season because it's so... yeah, there's lots of varying opinions, good and bad and ugly. So yeah, but I want to know, tell me everything. What were you expecting from this season? And how far around your expectations did the show actually go? Did you need to pause to scream and cry and throw up when we got Kanej Wesper in season 2 of Shadow and Bone? Imagine telling 2016 me that I was going to see this in the year 2023. I never even expected to get a Six of Crows adaptation, full stop, because it's locked behind Shadow and Bone. But here we are. By some miraculous way it happened, and now I have a Wesper kiss that... I have more than a kiss, actually. Got lots of content. Lots of flirting, lots of banter, lots of cuddles. That scene where they were just like kissing and Kaz walked past them like, oh my fucking god, I hate couples. Thank you so much for delivering that to me. I will hold it in my heart forever. So thank you guys so much for watching me waffle on. Oh, waffles! Nina calling Kaz waffles. Just so many moments that I fucking love. I will see you all next time. Literally, I will turn the camera off now, I promise. Bye!